All right, is the government right to say they're going to ban smoking outside schools and hospitals? I'd love your calls on this, as it's splitting opinion on our panel today. The Health Secretary wants to make it illegal to smoke in playgrounds and on hospital grounds in England as part of the new Tobacco and Vapes Bill, which will also make it impossible for anyone currently aged 15 or under to buy cigarettes. It's part of the government's drive to create a smoke-free generation, to stop kids getting hooked on nicotine and to protect vulnerable people from second-hand cigarette smoke. Tim, what do you think?
Look, I don't smoke. I think it's a disgusting habit and, it kills people. But how long do we carry on this war against smokers? Smokers ultimately have chosen to pay for their cigarettes, about £15 a packet of 20 cigarettes. I don't know how people could afford the habit, but they pay well more into the NHS, for their medical treatment. We profit from them, really. There's already a lot of stigma attached to it. But at the end of the day, these people have chosen to smoke. It's legal.
It affects other people. I mean, for example, we don't allow people to drive without seatbelts, even if they're alone on the road, because we don't want to pick up the pieces.
And that's why I can understand why a few years ago the Blair government banned cigarette smoking indoors in restaurants, etc. But outside, I just think it's going too far. Particularly if you're in hospital. Why are you in hospital? You're in hospital probably because you're in a high-stress moment. Just going outside for a fag. There are limits to how much we can try and control people and say, you're doing the wrong thing, you can't do it. I think this oversteps the line.
OK, so we've reached the line with smokers. We can't go any further.
Stop persecuting them.
One in four 11 to 15-year-olds have tried vaping in 2023. That's an appalling number.
It might stop them smoking.
Remember, this isn't just about tobacco smoke, it's about tobacco smoke. It's about tobacco smoking and vaping.
Well, hang on. Tobacco is what kills you, right?
Yes, but vaping has nicotine in it.
We don't.
And it has a load of other things.
Nicotine's not what kills you.
And it has a load of other ingredients. It is not regulated. It is not registered. Scotland already has a ban, a 15-metre rule, which means that you can't smoke within 15 metres of a hospital anyway. And that's just a sensible thing to do. Listen, I'm not saying that you should so choose to take up smoking, Tim.
I don't want to.
You can smoke all you want, wherever you want. But why should that be the NHS's problem? 80,000 people a year in the UK are killed as a result of cancer or other illnesses associated with smoking. Go ahead. If that's what you want to do, you can do it. But why are you bringing that into a public space? I don't have a choice of being in the same hospital as a smoker. So why should I suffer from being near one?
This is outside, though. The effect on you is minimal.
Tim, the thing that I really want to stress is the kids. It is the fact that 1 in 4 11 to 15-year-olds have tried vaping, and banning them outside schools will at least, even if it discourages 1 or 2 young people, that is enough for me to pass this.
Tim?
Vaping, isn't perfect, but, there's so many people who have tried over the years to give up smoking. They've tried the patches, they've tried everything, and vaping has worked. Vaping is overall a good thing. Now, you're right to worry, is it proliferating amongst young people who never were interested in smoking? But Jeremy's right. Yes, nicotine is addictive, but vapes do not have the same toxic tar and other things that kill people.
If they are legitimate vapes, one thing that we don't have in this country, in England, is a register. You can buy vapes from any corner shop, any off license, and they could be faked. And there have been, you and I are journalists, we both know this, there have been numerous investigations into whether vapes are real or not. And the ones that are fake, the ones that are still, you're able to purchase at any time.
You would ban fake ones, you don't ban real ones then?
I would limit real ones, so I'd make it only affordable or applicable.
To what we're discussing.
No, I know, but I feel like the conversation here is about why smokers have the right to smoke, rather than why we should be protecting our kids from people
The trouble
who do
is,
smoke.
if we, as regards schools and hospitals, Tim, the hospitals particularly, there was a song by a sort of punk band about 20 years ago called "Smokers Outside the Hospital Gates," by the band called The Editors. Because it's a real British thing that at the front of every hospital you've got 4 smokers. Some of them are on drips.
Yeah.
And they shouldn't be there, should they?
Well, I think, if you're actually leaving your hospital bed at a time when you're in danger to have a smoke, that's dangerous. I think that's a different question. But
I want to stand outside the gates, not smoking.
Well, you can,
I've got to breathe in there.
Jeremy, I've got a really radical solution for you. You could stand a little bit away from the smokers.
I don't want to.
Well, why can't the smokers stand a little bit away from us?
Well,
do you know what I mean? The point is
they already go outside. Why do we have to then
because
stop them?
Because we don't want them near the doorways. I shouldn't have...
This is persecution.
But if you want to kill yourself by smoking, that is entirely and completely
chances-
your choice.
I want to show you this.
I shouldn't be responsible for secondhand smoking.
This is how addictive smoking is, right? This is the story of a guy who was in an oxygen tank because he had lung problems caused, I think, by smoking. He was told, and you don't need to be told this, by the way, do not smoke in an oxygen chamber. He did smoke in it, and he blew himself up, and he blew the chamber up. And his family then complained to the hospital that he wasn't told clearly enough not to smoke. Now, Tim, that is the madness here.
It's madness.
People who smoke need to be told clearly you can't do it inside an oxygen chamber.
Well, that is absolutely dangerous. Of course you shouldn't do that. But we are talking about an incredibly powerful addiction. People who smoke now, despite the cost, despite the warnings, despite what they know about the health consequences, they have made a decision. Perhaps they can't control it, but to then say you can't even have a cigarette when you're perhaps in hospital for one of the most stressful times in your life.
That's interesting.
It just ultimately people have to be trusted.
0207 862 2222, because we'd love to hear. And by the way, this is not the only story. We looked up some of these because I remember this story from a long time ago. And there have been other ones since, and it's people on oxygen masks who insist on having a fag. Sometimes they've been given an oxygen therapy set at home and they've blown up. So,
goodness gracious.
It's just a reminder of how compulsive, I think, how addictive it is.
If you want to have a ciggy at the end of a night, when the pub's closed and you're there outside, or when the club's closed and you just want to have a ciggy and enjoy the night, that's fantastic.
And that's going to be banned soon if the government has its way.
About
even that.
A hospital? Am I
Let's
crazy?
Go to Jane. Jane's on the phone. Jane, you have to go to hospital a lot at the moment, and not smoking related. I know you've got cancer.
Yes, I have. I've got terminal cancer.
I'm sorry.
And I go to the hospital quite a lot for cancer treatment.
So is this something that needs a look at? Smokers congregating just outside the steps?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm an ex-smoker, so I know what it feels like when you're desperate for a cigarette. I stopped smoking 25 years ago. They're never going to stop these people from smoking. You're never going to stop it. You're never going to eradicate it. So I think really what they should do is provide somewhere that smokers can go to take them away from the door so that people who are coming in and out of the hospital don't have to breathe in other people's smoke.
Yeah, no, listen, I hear you. But as discussed with this story here, and you know this because you've smoked, it is so addictive that I don't know whether you'll even control it like that. I'm not sure.
Well, I think it would at least show that we're trying to do something.
Yeah.
Not just to eradicate it, but to help the people who do smoke. Because it isn't nice for people coming in and out the hospital to breathe in other people's smoke. And I especially resent it because I'm also an asthmatic. And even although I did smoke myself, I did stop because my breathing was becoming problematic.
Understood, Jane.
And I just think it's unfair.
Well, listen, I wish you all the best, and I hope you get through the treatment.
Bless you, Jane. Jesus love you.
Yeah. Take care, Jane. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thomas in the Highlands, hi.
Hi, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Well, where are you on this idea of banning smokers outside school gates and hospital gates?
Well, if you watch it in the Highlands in the Rigmore Hospital, if you go up there, a young lady on the panel says there's a ban on the 50 metres in Scotland. Right, but if you go to Rigmore Hospital, which I've been a few times, they stand outside the automatic door and they have the cigarettes. Some are in their pyjamas, some are just standing there smoking.
Have you seen anyone on a drip?
No, I've not seen anyone on a drip, but you see them in their pyjamas, maybe on the Zimmers, and you're like, wait a minute, guys, go across to the car park and smoke.
So so the suggestion there is it's not enforced, is that right? Or so,
Yeah, I don't think it's enforced, no.
Well, that's very much in Tim's favour, that you can have all the rules in the world. We haven't got the enforcement. We can't even enforce the law on burglary.
People thought that we couldn't enforce the ban on indoor smoking, and that's been one of the greatest successes, I think, in public health, in nudging people in the right department. This This absolutely can happen. And I'm not saying that people should stop. This isn't a ban on smoking. What this is saying, if you want to smoke, people who go to hospital, and that comment from Jane, people who go into hospital, it's the worst day probably in their lives, right? You don't want to be standing next to someone and coughing and choking whilst they're choosing to smoke.
Particularly if they're in for a
That's
lung-related...
just about basic courtesy, though. It's about people standing aside.
Yes.
You don't need to enforce. You don't need to get the law involved in
Well,
this.
it's not working at the
we're
moment.
adult human beings. Let's just behave decently towards one another.
OK, Thomas, thank you. Bianca in Kent, you are a smoker, Bianca.
I am. Not a big smoker, but a smoker.
What do you think about the idea of if you go into hospital being told, look, you can't smoke inside the building or outside?
Well, I can remember when there was a room in the hospital for smokers. That's going back some time, though. But I've been in hospital for like a week, and there's signs everywhere saying you cannot smoke on these grounds, and there's still, like you say, 20 people around the door and on the benches. You're not going to stop it. I think the other Jane had a good idea, maybe segregating. But can I just say that, yes, it's not fair to ask someone to walk. Oh, it's like nearly a mile to get off the grounds of the hospital.
Yeah.
But I personally, if there was two people sitting on a bench and they weren't smoking, I would not go and sit next to them out of politeness.
Understood.
Very
Thank
good
you,
point.
Bianca, very much. Good note to end on.